this is the article that Steve wrote. Labour's £600 energy windfall tax vote is preposterous political posturing. Great alliteration on that as well. Now, Steve, we've just heard from Bill about the food bank situation. The £600 windfall tax is almost the only thing being waved around in Parliament as a solution to this. Can you tell us why it's preposterous posturing?
Good morning. Yeah, look, I mean, thank you for the nod to my alliteration. Yes, it was intentional, but it kind of sums up the story very well, really, because this windfall tax on North Sea oil and gas producing companies, Rachel Reeves, the wonderful Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, kind of tabled the notion that this would generate £600 for every family to go towards the cost of their utility bills. Of course, when you break it down, this £600, it just sounds like an awful lot of money, as do most figures which are bandied around by the political and media class. Of course, £600 in reality is nothing. It only took, I mean, it sums up the situation really crisp, in that I think it was really only me in the independent media and the corporate media to actually go, well, hang on, let me just work out 5 minutes, work out the maths of this and show that it is preposterous political posturing. Because overall utility bills, with the two increases, firstly that we saw in April and then in October, they've gone up by over £1,600 a year come October. That's how much the total increase will have been. So £600, do a basic percentage workout there, it's just 37% of this overall £1,622 increase. So £600 doesn't actually even cover the increase that we saw in April, let alone the increase that's coming in October. As a percentage, this overall increase come October will be 126%. So what Labour's actually saying is, well, we'll give you £600, but you're still going to see an 80% increase in your utility bills. This money does not even touch the sides. In April, and with this first increase, the Resolution Foundation worked out that of the bottom 10% poorest families in this country, 62% of them were in what is now called fuel stress, which is something David Cameron rebranded fuel poverty to in 2013. We don't say fuel poverty anymore. That sounds too horrendous. We call it fuel stress. And 62% of the bottom 10% poorest families were already in fuel stress in April with this increase. So Starmer, Reeves, Labour's £600 will not even lift these families out of the fuel stress they were already in April. Never mind what is going to happen in October. As I said in the article for Bywire, in 2019, 8,500 people died that winter through not being able to heat their homes properly due to government policies. And this was before any kind of, quite frankly, mad increase as we're seeing this year. So goodness knows what is going to happen this winter. But this idea that £600 is any kind of support when it's not even going to cover the first increase is an absolute nonsense. And I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute. It just sums up the state of the Labour Party at present. I do want to say one thing as well, because this is being bandied around and I feel it's important to address it, that this idea of giving back the £20 a week universal credit uplift, that would only cover 64% of the total fuel bill increases that we're seeing in April and October this year, 64%. So again, we're not even covering how much it's gone up by in the first place. And that is without the news this week that inflation has hit 9%, which has actually hit 10.2% for the poorest families, because there's this disparity between inflation for the richest families, 8%, and the poorest families, 10.2%. So 5 minutes of calculations shows that Labour's windfall tax is an absolute nonsense. Not that anyone else wanted to work that out.
Do you think, that Labour, the Tories not having anything at all on the table as a solution, and then Labour saying we've got this £600 thing, does that mean that the Tories say, yeah, okay, we'll take the £600, and they won't actually have done much at all, and they'll look like they're listening? So because there's no alternative to the £600 that's being aired by anyone in Parliament. I can't see many people airing anything other than that. And the BBC have put on their website yesterday that there are all these ways that Sunak can cover for this problem, but they don't mention nationalisation at all or public ownership. Is it a kind of stitch up between the parties? It just feels like they're just not allowing that nationalisation idea to come forward, are they?
Look, I mean, at best, it's incompetence by Labour, and that is really at best. I don't think they're incompetent. I think they know full well what they're doing. And at worst, it is a stitch up because, of course, Labour tabling this BS idea of this paltry increase, not even increase, this paltry handout to people, which won't even cover the basic increase this year, is giving the Tories this freedom to go, oh, well, okay, well, the opposition, the party of the workers, the left-wing Labour Party suggested this, so we have helped you, and why, we've done something, why don't we do any more? Of course, it's giving them this almost backup to go, well, we have helped, look what we've done. I mean, I know there's reports coming out today, there's this whole story about Boris Johnson referring to supporting the poorest people financially as playing into bleeding hearts, wasn't there? So I still can't see, and as I wrote in the article, it's highly unlikely that the Tories will do this, but it does give them, it provides cover for their complete inaction. I mean, again, at best, and at worst, the fact that, as I've been reframing this cost of living crisis too, this is class war. This isn't a cost of living crisis, because a cost of living crisis implies that this is something which has happened suddenly, and is somehow out of the full control of governments and corporations, when firstly it hasn't happened suddenly. You speak to any disabled and chronically ill people, they've been at a cost of living crisis for over a decade. If you speak to the poorest families in society, they've been in a perpetual cost of living crisis since at least 40 years ago. This isn't new. This is new for some people in society, but the cost of living crisis isn't new. It's just broadening it out. So therefore, by default, if something is ongoing and if a government knows that the policies they are enacting directly impact the poorest people the hardest, and do nothing about it, you can only call it class war. Cost of living crisis is what they want us to call it, when actually it's class war. So no, I think Labour is laying cover for the Tories. Whether they're doing it on purpose or not remains to be seen. And moreover, this is a systemic issue which has been going on, as we know, for decades.